So week one of Battle for Azeroth is coming to a close, and I just have to say that for myself personally, it has been quite good. Let's kind of just walk through all the different things that we've experienced, starting off with the launch. The launch was either really, really good for some people or just kind of a little bit rough. Like, I'm playing on Proudmoore US, and there were some definite periods of time where it was either really laggy or the servers were actually having to be offline completely for a little bit. But, a worldwide release is nothing to just scoff at. That was pretty crazy that they even attempted that, and it was only down for maybe 1 or 2 hours at the most, and didn't really impact me too hard. So overall, I think the launch was very successful. Sure, yes, it going down is never fun, especially on the first day, but I feel like after all these years, you can kind of expect that. I think that Legions was kind of just a crazy happenstance that it didn't get too out of bounds, too laggy or anything like that. But outside of that, a little bit of a rough period of time. It was pretty smooth. And then into the zones, as I said, I'm playing on Alliance. I just have to say that I had no expectations for Kulturas. I did get into the beta, but I did not do much in it. I mainly just looked at the classes. I didn't really want to spoil myself over the expansion just because of how late I got into the beta, and I didn't want it to be so fresh in my mind of the leveling experience when the expansion actually went live. So when I actually did get a chance to do those zones, holy crap, it feels like such a really well fleshed out world, at least in Kulturas. One of the things I felt like has been missing from zones in the previous couple of expansions is just having some life to the zone. It's been so constant that every zone in the previous expansions were like under attack at all times. It hasn't been since Mists where you've just had a zone exist for what it is and can kind of experience it as a place and not just, oh, here's a war zone. You don't really know what this place was like before the war zone. It's just always a war zone. So I felt like these zones felt much more alive in that sense, and you were experiencing the zone. Yes, obviously the war is all around us and there's different problems that we have to solve, but there was also those places that just felt like experiencing a world, and that to me is something that's been really important to me personally that I've really wanted to see again. It's one of the main reasons I'm really looking forward to Classic, is just experiencing a world. So I was really happy that there was more of that in Kulturas. So starting with Drustvar, that's where I started off. I have to say that's been my favorite zone so far. I just really like the aesthetic. They haven't done which is really kind of surprising, they haven't done like a witches type theme before, at least not in that same kind of style, that old English kind of witches style. So that was really interesting to see, and kind of the differences in the magic that they used, and just like the color palette being really dark and grays and browns, which is such a stark contrast coming from Legion with the bright greens and other colors like that, where it was just in your face neon, and now you have these really these duller tones, but still with a lot of feeling behind them. I really enjoyed Drustvar. I know a lot of people might have a different view on Drustvar. It might have been like a little bit too drab, but for me, the music and just how it all tied together was really cool. Also, just kind of the no spoilers, but the kind of the Stranger Things elements to it that you see throughout it as well, especially as you get later into the quest lines in the Pride of Kulturas, which is what unlocks Siege of Borealis for the Alliance. I won't say too much more on that, but I just really enjoyed everything that encompassed in that zone personally. My favorite, or my wife's favorite zone, was actually Tirisgard Sound, and that was like the zone that was very full of pirates and fishing and just kind of the core aspects of what it's like to be a Kultiran human, which was very different from what it is to be just a normal human back in the Eastern Kingdoms or something like that. So I really felt like these zones had a lot of life. I do feel like Stormsong was a little bit rough, just because there was a lot of like bare basics types quests in there. A lot of the quests weren't really fleshed out in a interesting way. I mean, they were fleshed out, it wasn't really interesting. Like the Quillbore area was really annoying. The treasure hunting part of the quest line was kind of boring to me personally, but the zone itself was absolutely beautiful, and the music was really good as well. So questing has been just really cool. I'm actually looking forward to doing it again. Even the Alliance zones, right off the bat, I've already started on my Paladin and leveling him, kind of doing almost the exact same path, just because it's fun, and obviously I want to get him geared too, but it was actually a fun experience that I'm looking forward to doing again. And then on the other side of that is the Horde side, which I haven't even gotten a chance to experience. So when I get my Horde characters up, that's going to be a completely new experience. And that's just crazy to when you really think about it. In Legion, in WoD, in Miss, in Cataclysm, in pretty much every expansion since Vanilla, really, we've had the same kind of experience as you level. In this experience, you have two totally different viewpoints with the Horde and the Alliance. So that's really cool to me. And as an Alliance player, going over to Zandalar and experiencing those zones from an outward perspective with like no real story behind it in terms of like the build up to those zones, you just feel like you're in this jungle, in this foreign place with danger around every corner. You know, I've been playing with war mode on as well, which definitely I think really emphasizes this dangerous territory. And it's been a lot of fun for me to do that as well. And going on to war mode, I was really kind of been like, I kind of had been like a back and forth on it. I was kind of thinking, well, if you like PvP, you'll just always do the PvP, and if you don't, then you'll just do then you won't do war mode. For me personally, I have not turned it off, and this is for someone who has been playing on normal realms for the past like 3 years now, 4 years now. I've been playing in the PvE realms, and I haven't turned war mode off since. It's just a better sense of the world. The threats are more real. Player characters are around every corner. You never know what you're getting into. And I think that goes into the fact that we have two different continents. When you're on your home continent, a lot of times you feel like you're a little bit safer. Everything you do, you don't have to worry about, you know, danger being around every corner. You might get ganked at any moment. Whereas when you're in the other continent, you feel like you're really in enemy territory, and I think that's a really cool idea. I mean, obviously you can still get ganked on either continent, right? There's definitely the hubs for both Horde and Alliance on both sides, and that the areas you can kind of get a feel for where they end up kind of clumping. But overall, it feels like such a different dynamic when your Alliance being in Zandalar and then being in Kul Tiras. So I feel like the war mode has really panned out for me personally. So that's all I'm going to say about questing and kind of the world in general. It's been absolutely fantastic. Obviously, for everything that I'm talking about here, the shine has not worn off yet. You know, everything's still shiny and new, so obviously we'll have to see how that wears over time. But at least for the first week, I think I've really bought into the way that they've created the world. I'm being 100% honest with this as well, that it's not like a filler expansion, which I was worried about, and I know a lot of people were worried about, that it would be this kind of a filler expansion until the next thing that comes along. But no, I've full bought into this. And for the Alliance players playing through the quest lines and the storyline, once you get to that the Pride of Kul Tiras quest line, again, no spoilers, but that's how you unlock Siege of Borealis, in case you're wondering, or if you didn't know. That quest line is probably one of the most moving and emotional quest lines they've put into the game. Again, I won't say anything about it, but it is really, really well done and really well designed, and it was such a blast to go through that. So make sure, if you haven't done that yet, you know, put that in your calendar, something you want to work through, as well as that way you can get a Siege of Borealis unlocked as well. So with that said, and talking about Siege of Borealis, let's go ahead and talk about the dungeons. You can really see the design philosophy of Mythic Plus being full front in a lot of these dungeons, but also beyond that, just the designs are really interesting. Not all of them are created equal, obviously. There's some bosses that just kind of fall over without even you needing to know any mechanics, and some, if you don't, there is absolutely no way you could possibly beat it. So bosses like the last boss in Shrine of the Storms, that boss on Mythic felt it felt like really difficult. Obviously I'm playing with friends and with guildies and stuff like that. We pugged the tank for that one. I haven't been having to pug tanks a lot, which is really weird coming from an expansion where I mained a tank, and now I'm having to constantly look for one. Feels bad. It feels bad. But Pug Tank and the rest of it was kind of a pre-made. It was two of my wife and one of my best friends, and then one of my guild members in my guild, and then a Pug Tank. So it took us, I think, 2 attempts on the last boss of Shrine. Really hard boss, I have to say. Like, just the way it's designed, at least for the first week and the gear that we have, really, really difficult. The second to last boss in Temple of Sethralis, I believe is how you pronounce it. If you don't set your group up in a good way, that fight is actually really difficult. I can imagine that there's some people who did that fight and was like, what? That's easy. You just stand in front of the pillars and block the beams. Yeah, but but if you don't do it, it makes me sound stupid, but there's certain ways that it'll be different for different groups on depending on your experiences and your group composition, as well as the people in your group. That can make that easier or harder. I think our group was way too scared about getting the stacks from the pillars, and we ended up trying to split the damage when what turned out to be super easy for our group was that each person just soaks a pillar and then waits for the debuff to go off. So you get to 10 stacks and then reset. And that was like, as soon as we did that, it was just stupid easy. So that boss took a little bit more coordination. Last boss at Shrine took a little bit more coordination. But overall, they've been, even on Mythic, pretty straightforward for the most part, but a lot of fun. It's been, I didn't watch like any guides beforehand because I kind of wanted to go into it fresh, kind of do the problem solving myself. And that is one of my favorite parts of any expansion, is experiencing a dungeon for the first time and just kind of picking it apart and saying, okay, what can I do here? What can we do? Which is kind of funny because I don't do that at all with raids. I usually want to know what I'm getting into as soon as we get in there. But for dungeons, I can be a little bit more relaxed and casual with it and just kind of figure out how we want to approach it as a group. And then later on, I can figure out what the actual best way was for it. But a lot of the dungeons had really awesome themes as well. Like Atoll d'Azar was super, super gorgeous. It's very pretty. The bosses are a lot of fun. A lot of different ways that you can go about doing them. Atoll de Gore was really interesting. You know, the kind of a cramped space. There hasn't been like a real prison type dungeon. I mean, I think Tol Barad's raid was kind of like that, but not nearly on the same kind of level. And then, obviously, how could you forget, like, Waycrest Manor? That place is straight out of Final Fantasy XIV. I'm sorry, it is. As someone who has played Final Fantasy XIV, there's a dungeon that is exactly like it. So super vibes from that. And it was just really well done, in my opinion. The aesthetic of it, the music in there, the bosses, the trash, and just the variable directions that you can go. It's definitely going to be the arc way of this expansion. So really, really awesome dungeon there. I don't think there's a dungeon I don't like. The only two that I might grow to dislike are probably Freehold, just because it is more on that boring side in terms of compared to the other ones. I mean, it's maybe I've just done it too many times already, because the two-handed weapon drop from there is best for arms warrior. My wife is an arms warrior, so we've been trying to get that for her with no luck. But maybe that's why it feels a little bit lackluster compared to the other ones, as well as with the mother load. There's just so much trash in a linear dungeon like the mother load for that to stay fresh at all times. And especially on Mythic Plus with like teaming or something like that, that dungeon is going to be a nightmare. But for right now, it's still all right. I don't really like the minefield at the end either. But all the other dungeons I have really enjoyed. I've done them all on Mythic except for King's Rest. I still have yet to unlock the reputation for that. Probably won't get that done this week, unfortunately. I was just a little bit behind on my Zandalar reputations, and therefore it'll probably have to wait till next week. But with that being said, I probably will be able to start working on the Mythic Dungeon guides as early as next week. But I wanted to go ahead and kind of run down everything and just kind of how I thought everything went with the Mythics and whatnot. So I think they're all tuned fairly okay. Obviously, things like Freehold is a hell of a lot easier than Shrine. We'll see how that affects Mythic Plus. Not really sure how that's going to go. We'll see. I'm assuming a lot of people, well, I'm not assuming, but a lot of people in my guild and in amongst my friends are assuming that Shrine is going to be the seed of the triumvirate of this expansion, or at least this early in the expansion, as it's just like you get that key in Mythic Plus and you're like, well, I guess we're done then. Especially when the effects is the tyrannical, where the bosses are getting harder. We'll see how that works with gear. We'll see if they nerf it. They've already nerfed the Azerite traits. And speaking, let's go ahead and talk about Azerite and the Azerite trait system. This has been the number one negative for me of this expansion is Azerite gear. I don't like it. I really don't understand. But I mean, I understand it, but it's not fun to me, I think is the main thing. It feels like, hey, this is the thing you have to grind. Because I had a full set before. They've nerfed it, I think, twice now, the amount you need to have for each rank, or for each Azerite trait on the armors. Because at first, for the Mythic Dungeon gear, it was ridiculously out of reach for me. Like, I had been focusing on questing and getting gear through dungeons. I hadn't had a lot of time yet to really work on the Azerite. So when I have a full set for both Resto and Elemental now, I have 340 gear in every Azerite piece. I have 2 of each, which is awful because of the fact that I don't need that yet. I just wanted one set, and it's hurt my other drops. But when I got those, I wasn't able to even equip them because I didn't have any traits unlocked. And that's just a terrible feeling to get a gear drop that's supposed to be really good. I got the best in slot helm for Elemental for the dungeon gear, and I should have been really happy about that. But instead, it's like, well, I can't even use this because my 310 helm is simming better than a 340 helm with no Azerite traits on it. And I think that's another part of it is Blizzard really wants to get away. Like, I know they really want to get away from needing to sim to know when something is better. They've really tried to push this whole idea of item level is the end-all be-all. Whether you like that or not is not really the point. That's what they're really trying to push, and they just keep making it so that's not the case. So it frustrates me so much because it should be fun to get those pieces, but instead it's like, great, I have to super grind these out. Like, the helm I had before, we'll stay on the helm situation. I had a 310 helm with the best in slot Azerite piece in the outer ring. Awesome. I get the best in slot helm from Mythic with the second best trait in the outer ring, but I couldn't unlock it yet. I simmed them both, and it's not even close that the 310 was better. So it's that kind of experience isn't fun. It's like, oh, well, now I've got to grind for 4 or 5 hours just to make this piece that should already be better. Now, obviously, like I said, they've already nerfed those traits, so you can get them sooner, which is fine. And it is better now. I'm all of my Azerite gear is now the Mythic gear that I got from the dungeons. There's no way it can be better than the 325 gear. That's awesome. Great. I can do that. But it doesn't feel fun to me to know that even though I have this really powerful gear, I'm going to be trying to unlock the traits for it easily for the next month. And you might say, well, that's good. That's content that you have to do that you can actually like work on and do. But that's not fun content. That's just purely grinding to get something that you already have. And I think like what they should have, I don't know. I just don't like the system. That's what it comes down to. I don't really like this system. With the weapons in Legion, and I did like the weapon system in Legion minus a couple, we're not going to get too much into it. I didn't really mind it in Legion because you had the weapon that you knew you were going to have for the rest of the expansion, and you were always making steady progress on that weapon. Yes, you would run into walls where you needed the next rank of artifact knowledge, but you were always making steady progression with your weapon throughout the entirety of the expansion, and you knew you were going to always have that weapon. With the Azerite gear, you're going to replace that gear all the time, especially early on. Like, sure, like I don't know how Azerite gear works with Mythic Plus. I'm not going to look it up right now. But for right now, I have the best gear that I can get in terms of the item level for my Azerite pieces. But they'll still get replaced pretty early on once I start raiding as well. And I've got all these things to unlock on them, but I'll never get to see half of that. Which maybe that's just Blizzard saying, maybe I'm not the target for this. Maybe that's what it is. Like maybe this is for people who won't start doing Mythic Dungeons until a month or two from now, which again, that's totally fine. And those people will have had way more time to build up Azerite than I have in the first 6 days. I think that's fair, right? There's no way I should be that far ahead. I don't want to be that far ahead either. And that really discourages players from trying to push themselves and get higher up, later in the expansion. It should be a continuous thing, and you should be able to jump in pretty much with wherever, which is what Blizzard wants. But for me, it's just seeing those traits there and knowing that I can't unlock them and probably won't for that piece of gear is just kind of bumming. I wish there was a better way to do this system, but I can't think of. I'm not an ARM trader developer. I'll make some videos later with me doing that. I promise you that. But for this, I don't have the answer, I guess is the best way to say it. I can just say that for me personally, Azerite gear has not been the most interesting or fun part of the expansion. It's definitely been more on the negative side of things. But that's about it as far as the gear goes. Like, everything else has been fine. I've really liked the approach they've taken to kind of the equip little bonuses you get from some of the items, or like the way that some of the trinkets work. It's been really nice to see them going back to a more interesting model, like more on uses that do something very specific. Like I know there's one trinket for agility melee, which is it's an activate on a 30-second cooldown where the next 5 physical attacks that you do, or I think it's auto attacks that you do, deal an extra 2,000 damage, which is like, that's just really cool. It's really flavorful. You bind that into something else and it just does its thing, but it feels good to use. It's not just like you randomly get, intellect for 10 seconds or something like that, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with those trinkets either, but it's nice to have some variety in how these things work is kind of what I'm saying. So other items I've been really happy with, other than, like weapons being almost impossible to get, at least for my group of friends in my guild. I still have a 286 shield, and I've finished with mythics that I can do. I have done heroics every day so far, trying to grind out a shield. I'm at the point where I'm like, okay, I'm done with heroics at this point. This is ridiculous, just because I'm like, everything else is not better for me to get, and it's just the shield. So I guess I'm stuck with a 286 shield until I eventually get one to magically appear. But, like other than that, like I've the gear has been fun. It's been the normal gearing process. Trinkets are more interesting in my opinion. Not really caring about the necklace. It just is kind of there. There's nothing you do with that. But other than that, interesting. Oh, enchants on that gear, by the way. Enchants have been kind of interesting as well. Kind of going back to a more... When did the last time they do enchants kind of like this, where it's like, I forgot what they do. There's the ones that they stack to 5, and then once you get to 5, then you get a bigger stack of your main stat for like 10 seconds or something like that. Just thinking about things in a different way than just, the satyr necklace enchant, whatever that one's called, where it does a little bit of damage every so often. Yes, it's kind of the same idea, especially when you're looking at it at like just like how much damage you did overall. I don't know. I just like little flavorful things that work differently than just here's some extra damage. So I don't know. Maybe that's boring to most of y'all, but for me personally, I've just enjoyed seeing the kind of different ways of interacting with stats and numbers and damage. So that's just me personally. So that's pretty much it. The storyline has been really awesome. The gearing process has been spot on. The dungeons I can't wait to do them on Mythic Plus. They're going to be a lot of fun. I just got to finish unlocking King's Rest, and then I'll be good to go. So what has your experience been like in BFA so far? I really want to know how you guys are enjoying it. Whenever you go to the forums, you see all those hate posts, and I still feel like that's a vocal minority. I can't imagine how anyone's hating on this expansion. It has been super fun for me personally. I've had a blast so far. I'm looking forward to the next week where we're getting more things to unlock. We're going to get world boss. Maybe. I don't want to spread misinformation. I'm pretty sure we're getting world bosses and some other stuff too, I think is also unlocking. I need to read up on that, clearly. But anyway, how's your experience been with this expansion so far? It has been super fun on my end. Let me know what you guys think. And until next time, I'll see you guys then, hopefully with some dungeon guides or some other things of that nature, all right? All right, I'll see you guys next time.